This is Michael Kaplan from Taga, and we're here today with Larry Coryell in Orlando, Florida, getting ready to film an instructional video. And we're going to do a quick little interview beforehand and get to know Larry a little bit. Thank you, sir, for agreeing to do this today.
Most pleasure.
So, I guess first thing is, when did you start playing guitar? At what age?
I'm not sure. I had to wait for my hands to get big enough to play those big guitars that they had back in 1959, 1958. Like this, big guitars like this. My body hadn't grown enough. I just messed around with the ukulele when I was 12, just so I could just get the principles of playing a stringed instrument. But around 15 or 16, I finally was able to play a guitar this big, and I started studying.
And it was always jazz, even from the get-go?
No, I started with...
Oh, okay.
Started with Chet Atkins style, because I grew up in the sticks.
The sticks of where?
The sticks in the southeastern quadrant of the state of Washington, which is like a desert.
Yeah.
And, but country and Western music and right-wing politics, that was all.
That was all there was?
That was all in there. And I did the Chet Atkins thing. I couldn't do it very well. And then I knew that there was a jazz guitar teacher in that same music store.
Mm-hmm.
So I went with him, and first thing he showed me was this.
Did you ever do any rock stuff back then? Yeah?
Yeah, but you don't need to take lessons to do rock. It's just natural.
Natural.
Yeah, that's natural. Just listen to a few Chuck Berry records, and just listen to the youth-oriented music market on the various media, and you got it.
All right. And so you, at this music store, I guess in southeast Washington, you started taking jazz lessons?
In the booming metropolis of Richland, Washington, which is 80 miles south of Yakima, 80 miles north of Walla Walla.
All right. And you did jazz lessons?
Yeah, after the Chet Atkins lessons, I really couldn't play the Chet Atkins style very well.
So you're about 16, 17 years old?
15, 16, yeah.
And doing just right into jazz?
Yeah, I mean, that first lesson, my teacher wrote out all these chords I was just playing for you. And because then I had specific information, and that's what I needed. I needed content.
Yeah, sure.
And it was great.
Did you have, was there a guitarist you happened to, I mean, other than Chet Atkins, I guess you liked, when you got into jazz?
He's the only person I heard.
What about when you started doing the jazz? Did you start to just eat it all up?
Well, my teacher, I borrowed his records.
Oh, all right.
Johnny Smith, Tal Farlow, pre-overdub Les Paul. He played a lot like Django.
Yeah.
Barney Kessel.
There you go.
And then a few months later, Wes Montgomery released the incredible jazz guitar of Wes Montgomery, which he did not like, by the way.
Really?
He didn't like anything he did until the live record that he made with Miles's rhythm section.
Oh yeah, the half smoking at half note.
No, that was also great, but that was afterwards. This was the one that was called Full House.
Oh, love it.
Full House.
That's the album that got me into jazz. It's interesting you said that. Because I was a rock guy, and then I very late in life, in my early 20s, I just bought a Wes Montgomery CD, and it was Full House, and I put it on, and I was blown away. I said, "What is this music I've never heard?"
He actually told me that he liked that record.
That was a phenomenal. So that's the stuff you were into, Wes and John, all the records, I guess, you were borrowing.
Yeah, I mean that's how I got I got parameters, and I would try to transcribe Tal Farlow solos to not much, without much success. But if I transcribed Barney Kessel stuff, it was easier, because Barney's approach to playing was more. It wasn't any less spectacular than Tal's. It was more basic.
Yeah, more accessible for you to.
At that time, especially.
Sure. And did you, at that time, 16 years old, did you, was it a hobby or did you just practice all the time or play all the time?
I practiced as much as I could. When I got into college, I practiced 8 hours a day.
Where'd you go? You went to University for Music? Or?
University of Washington for journalism.
Oh, okay.
My parents wanted me to have something to fall back on in case I didn't make it in music. And I practiced. I would when I
just played all the time.
Well, especially in the summer break, I'd play 8 hours a day.
Would you say you were playing or practicing or both together? Because there's
I really wasn't playing. I didn't know what playing was. I was just practicing.
Getting stuff together.
I was practicing what I thought was music. But when I went to my first jam session I drove downtown.
In university?
No, all the way downtown into Seattle, which is like 20 minutes from the university. But I was up in Lake City. Anyway, I thought, you don't want to know all that.
First jam
The first time that I tried to sit in with grown-up musicians was a disaster.
Really?
Yeah, I got lost. I didn't know what I was doing.
Natural.
And so I skulked away. And some musicians in my environment grabbed me and said, "Okay, come on.
We'll show you the ropes."
Yeah.
Well, that's how it goes with jazz. You got to give back to the younger guys.
Well, another guy was my age. And he played many instruments. He was a multi-instrumentalist. He played great piano. He ended up playing organ in one of my groups later. Oh, wow. But he also played great trumpet. And he just had me comp for him for about 3 or 4 weeks straight. He said, "You can't play any solos." And I said, "That's okay with me."
Hey.
So I just comped for him. And he had a blast because all of a sudden he had some chords underneath, and he could, he could do his thing. And
well, that's a good way to learn.
Yeah, that was good for me.
To get the right feel, comping for somebody.
Yeah, I didn't really
opening your ears.
I didn't really understand. I mean, and this guy he played modern. His guy was Miles on trumpet, but he was a child prodigy sort of, so he started early doing Louis Armstrong stuff, and that's where I saw that all of that was connected. I didn't know that all of that stuff was connected.
Interesting. How did you? So after university, how did you make the transition into a career? Was it a natural thing?
Well, I got good enough to be in a band that played after hours downtown, and I even played piano in that band sometimes.
Straight ahead stuff.
Yeah, I played. I wrote an arrangement of "Tonk" by Ray Bryant. That was jazz was really good back in that era. I mean, Bobby Timmons, the Cannonball Adderley.
Sure.
The big thing that we would play, the big flag waver at the end of the set was "Sacca Woe." And people went crazy.
Yeah.
That's when I came to understand that it's all blues.
Yeah.
Even when you're playing a hoity-toity, doily-type standard, it's still blues.
Even if you're playing the most complex jazz, with triads on top of it, it still comes back to, as we were talking earlier, blues. I mean, that's where I think the majority of when I say our, I mean Western music, comes from. This kind of music, whether it's jazz, rock, funk, reggae, it all comes from the blues. And without that, we were talking about playing with soul, playing with the right feel. If you don't have that, it's very difficult. And like we were talking about, something that might not be teachable. You can teach.
Well, I think if you stay with it, you can teach that.
If you listen to the right stuff too, right?
If the young player gets in the right band,
with the right guys,
if he's in the right environment, he'll be humiliated if he doesn't start to pick up on the spirit of what those guys are. Instead of playing a chord like this, you play it like this.
And there you got something right. And there you got a little bit of. What did you? You said you were in a band doing the after hours. that was the transition that kind of got you.
Yeah.
And then you stayed in Washington for a while, or?
Well, I got one more gig before I moved to New York.
Mm-hmm.
Two more gigs. I got one gig with what was considered to be the best lounge band in the city, because Jerome Gray, my jazz teacher, was the pianist in that band. But Jerome left, and they hired me, and we had a gig in Bellevue, not the hospital. And that's when I first heard this song.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't really appreciate what a great song it was, because I never paid. I listened to the lyrics, but at my age now, I understand those.
Oh, yeah. It's when you're a young kid, it's different.
The pain of love and the pain of life.
Pain of life.
and the.
Yeah.
I saw Barbra Streisand do it last month in Chicago. She did a digital duet with Anthony Newley. That guy was a genius.
How'd she sound? Phenomenal.
The both of them did. I mean, he was singing and she was singing. She's lost her. She can't hit the high major third on people anymore. But whatever.
Hey, she's still.
I mean, she and Jamie Dimon probably have their own banks.
So what? You moved to New York, and you just decided to make the move. I'm going to go be a pro musician.
Tell you what happened. After I left the lounge band because I wanted my own band, and I got asked to play at a place called I can't remember that. I think it was called the Gas Lamp in West Seattle. And it was more youth oriented, and we got a lot of young people. And it was the go-go time, so we had a go-go dancer. So we had to play, but not a problem.
Yeah.
Not a problem, because that's jazz anyway. Shotgun, we did Shotgun, all that stuff. Junior Walker.
Yeah.
The great tenor solo.
And so you had this gig.
And I had that gig, and that's when I saved up. I saved all the money.